Yamba.
Yamba.
Yamba. I can assure you this is this weird opening is 100% actually on topic. Yamba. Anyway.
Yamba.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Skeleton Crew podcast. I'm your host Stross. That's Sardo.
Yeah.
And we're here talking about well, this is a companion piece to two other episodes actually. Unintentional.
It
Wasn't
just sort of
planned.
happened that way.
Life decided to put us this way. So, this is a companion piece to the Persona 5 post-mortem. Most of you didn't listen to that. We understand. We saw
That's
the
fair.
runtime.
I totally get it.
My power literally went out trying to get us to stop, and we say nay.
We just kept yoing.
God, I haven't thought about that fine in like 1,000 years. The other companion piece this is related to is we did a look ahead to Infinite Wealth that's coming out in January.
Ah.
So, and I recently finished a game we both deeply love, which is Yakuza 7, or simply called
Like a dragon.
just called Like a Dragon. Do you know what its Japanese name is? I only recently
No.
learned this. So,
What is it?
Okay. I can see why they went with Like a Dragon. Well, I have to look it up. The Japanese name for this game is basically... Okay, how... Oh, great. Why did they put it like this? I don't know how to read Japanese. Oh, yeah. Whereabouts of Light and Darkness.
Okay.
I can see why they didn't go with that.
I mean, that makes sense, but yeah, I can see why they went with like a
It
dragon.
makes sense, but it makes it sound very different from what it is.
Yes.
It's one of those where it's like, I get why you did it. You don't need to explain yourself to me.
It's okay. It's okay.
But yes, it's we're talking about the whereabouts of Light and Darkness.
Yeah.
Or Like a Dragon in the United States, or simply known as probably what we're going to refer to it as Like a Dragon, or Yakuza 7.
Yeah. Good Y7.
Yeah. Why 7, you ask? Because
Well,
we
with
like
why?
it.
Why?
Anyway, folks, we're talking about Like a Dragon. This might be I don't think it's going to be a super long one. I think.
We'll try to keep it brevetous as possible. Is that a word? I don't.
I don't know. Luckily, the game is nowhere near as long as Persona 5, so we don't have like 10,000 hours of material to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, there is material after the post game, but the post game no one gives a shit about. It's not really that important. So let's get started. Do you want to introduce this game to us, Sardonicus Rex of
It's
Dinosaurs?
It's Persona 5 with more old people. And better, but I'm gonna say now. I'm very sorry. I love Persona 5. It's better written than Persona 5.
Yeah,
spoilers for my opinions.
Oh wow! Just jump right into it then. Well, I was gonna say I mean, I don't disagree with that, but we're gonna get into why that is and what we mean by that, because it's not like better written in the simple way of just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like one thing we like to want to just open up with, since we started with that, is that we want it to be made abundantly clear that we are talking about Persona 5 because these games are hilariously similar.
They have a lot of the same beats.
They really do. Like, for some reason, someone at RGG Studios went like, basically went, can we copy your homework?
Yeah,
and they went
just change it so it looks a little different.
Yeah, and then they got higher marks on it.
But it hits some similar topics, as in the undesirables of Japanese society, gray zones, corrupt politicians.
Basically, relatively the same villain plot.
Basically, kind of,
which is just weird.
sort of. Uh, two girls named Futaba.
Yeah. Played by the same person. This was likely a gag. We proved this gag.
Cassandra Lee Morris was here again as a small child instead of a cat this time, but
And
that's
other
basically the
characters.
same thing.
Oh
Yeah.
god, it was so funny when that happened. We'll talk more about that in a bit.
But it hits a lot of the strikingly similar kind of notes thematically, and it's just funny.
Yeah, we want this to be made abundantly clear. We are not saying this to pretend like, oh, we know. We're trying to make, like, this compare and contrast aspect is not because we're just, I played these two games in a row. It's because these actually happen to be weirdly similar games.
I don't know, it's a funny coinkydink.
It really is. It's a weird coincidence that makes you go, huh.
But let's talk about the game itself. So, Yakuza 7 features one man, Ichiban Kasuga. His name literally means number one, and he is number one in all our hearts.
Yeah.
He's a young Yakuza underling who really loves Dragon Quest, and I think it's fair to say, he's pure of heart.
He is the closest you're going to get to pure of heart.
He's a kind young man. His kind of establishing character moment is in the beginning, where he's supposed to be out on New Year's Eve collecting money that his family is owed, and he gets almost none of it back. He's very, very merciful and understanding with people to a fault.
The best way to really put it is he is probably the nicest guy to be a criminal.
He's awful at his job.
He's one of those characters that you wonder how he got here.
Yeah.
And
we get into how he...
The game explains itself, but it's also like, okay, I get how you got here, but also, really? Okay. So, yeah, you want to start? I think we should just start with what happens in this game.
So, now it doesn't start out with Ichiban. We instead start out with Ichiban's kind of father figure, Masumi Arakawa, who is voiced by George Takei, who does a spectacular job in the English dub. Like, we played the English dub for the
actually, we should probably mention that we have heard this game in both language tracks.
Yes.
So when we say certain things about the acting, we're probably speaking generally towards both, unless we specifically have to point it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we need to give credit to not just George Takei, but also for... Well, okay, actually, we're talking about the youngest version of this character of Masumi Arakawa.
This is Arakawa when he was just a boy.
Yes. In, like, the 1970s or whatever.
When
It might be actually earlier than that.
Maybe. But he's a young boy, and he's part of an acting troupe. And his mother is very cruel and abusive. We can see that she gave him a huge scar on his face that he has to cover with makeup. And he seems like a sweet kid who's got a really rough life.
Mm-hmm.
And so we stick with him for a second. He's kind of part of the opening scene. He's in a play. And eventually we move on to his underling, Ichiban Kasuga, who we just talked about.
Yeah. And basically, get ready to hear the words of bad things happen when people go get Peking duck in this story.
No, nobody gets their fucking Peking duck the way they want to.
They really don't. It's really shocking.
I'm starting to think that getting Peking duck is just a euphemism for killing someone.
At least in this story, it definitely is.
It's like, somebody's gonna come up to you like, "Hey, Sardo, you want to go get Peking duck?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm on to you, man."
You're this is that dog with Vietnam flashbacks.
It's like you're gonna shoot my father, aren't you? You're gonna shoot my father in front of me.
So what
You're gonna
happens
shoot me.
is in this small opening movie is that Masumi Arakawa gets up, goes to the bathroom like you do, and when he comes
As
back,
you
his
do.
father has been shot
Yes, he's been assassinated.
for reasons that we don't know. We will learn later, but anyway, what happens afterwards is we then go to not the present day, but the year 2000.
The year 2000.
Robots rule the earth. We were going for two very different songs. But then that's when we meet Ichiban. We see sort of his daily life in and around Kamurocho. And then we also see that one of his duties as a, to the Arakawa family, who now works for a much older Arakawa who looks cool as hell because he wears like a glove on his hand. Just the one glove.
Just the one.
And we see he also has to take care of Arakawa's son, Masato, who is...
It's never quite specified what Masato's disability is, but he is in a wheelchair.
Oh, I was going to talk about what he looks like.
Oh.
I was trying to decide yes, no, he is disabled.
I think it's implied that he had maybe something more to do with his lungs, because we'll get to that anyway.
Yeah,
but yes, how does he look?
I was trying to think of a very angry cat.
He's very early 2000s emo. He's emo in the genuine sense of the word.
Yeah. I mean, we have to understand that he lives in a country where, being disabled isn't the most enjoyable thing to be.
There's even more of a stigma in Japan on disability than there is here in the US, and that's saying something because...
We're not great about it either. We're a car-driving society, and being... Basically, the point is being Masato sucks. Because he's trying to have a good life.
And he's trying to, kind of have a reputation as the son of this, Yakuza patriarch.
He's trying to be cool and all that jazz. It doesn't work out. He goes to a host club. The host he really likes is revealed doesn't really give a shit about him, which,
She's just using him for his money.
Yeah. In fact, likes this this way older man. He will become important later.
And Masato and Ichiban both overhear her conversation with this man that she prefers, basically saying, yeah, I think Masato's a creep, I don't like him. And this is all after, might I add, that because Ichiban's Ichiban helps look after him, and Masato's I'm going to do this thing. And he injects himself with this mystery medicine that temporarily allows him to walk.
It is quite literally green medical goo.
It's the reanimator goo.
Yeah, basically. It's green, mysterious goo.
And this was, I think, the silliest part of the story, because it's
No, it's not. You know it's not. You know which part I'm thinking of, but...
I mean, silly just in terms of, was this necessary?
Maybe not. But the point is, Masato gets to walk for an evening, and then after hearing this, he tells Ichiban just to go. He's got to be depressed about it by himself, which, fair to him.
Yeah. It's say that Masato's kind of okay, I get why he's upset, but he is a very surly figure.
Yeah. He is understandably someone who's been dealt a really shitty hand in a lot of ways, and that this was just the point of God damn it, I want to be left alone, which is totally fine. I want to say that right now, because we're gonna be saying a lot about this character down the line for a variety of reasons. He is understandably down in the dumps.
Yeah.
And since we follow Ichiban, the next day he is told that the captain of the Arakawa family, a man named Joe Sawashiro, had murdered a man. and that Ichiban has to take the fall. And Ichiban's like, I'll do it. No problem. Because he's a good boy. And Ichiban goes to prison, where he's there for 18 years and has the most wonderful experience with bread.
He, and it's kind of a running joke in the Yakuza fandom that Ichiban eats some spectacularly modeled bread.
No, like, the animation on this bread is weirdly extremely good. Like,
And there's no reason for it.
it's one of those things where everyone's just like, I'm not sure why. It's one of those things where it's like, someone put a lot of effort in this bread for no reason, but goddamn did they do it.
Why not?
Yeah, and it just is. It's really funny. Like, he takes a bite of it when he realizes he's going to be in prison a little while longer, and he just bites into it, and it breaks in such a realistic way. It's like, goddamn. But anyway, he's in prison for 18 years. So all of the Yakuza games that happened outside of 0, 1 through 6, and I believe both Judgment, at least the first Judgment game, I think.
Mm-hmm.
When does the first Judgment take place? I totally do not know. I haven't played them yet.
Oh gosh, I forget.
But, like, at least I think the first Judgment game. I'm not sure about Lost Judgment. I think Lost Judgment happens afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
All happen during this time period that he's in prison. Most of the franchise that matters happens while this boy is in prison. And when he gets out, he's like 42.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's nobody there to greet him except
Adachi baby.
Yeah, Ichiban, there is nobody to welcome him once he returns to the outside world that he knows, but there is a DMV worker.
Well,
named Adachi.
A guy named Adachi. And Adachi has business with him.
Mm-hmm.
A business that he doesn't truly understand yet. And won't understand for a bit. But basically what happens is he goes back into Kamurocho, which is the main setting for most of the Yakuza series. And he talks to, like, people he used to know, and, like, the entirety of Kamurocho is different. You know, like, new stuff is there. Like, the people that he knew, like, changed their lives and got healthy or didn't. And the most important thing is the Tojo clan's gone.
It's all gone.
Replaced by the Omi Alliance, who, if you don't know who that is, those are the guys from Osaka. That's all you really need to know in terms of, like, how important this is.
And Arakawa has sworn his loyalty to the Omi, which is
oh my
fucking catastrophic for Ichiban.
For reasons. I'm not sure why it's catastrophic for him.
I mean, I'd imagine it's because, like, it's kind of because the Omi and the Tojo are at odds.
Yeah,
it makes sense, it's a betrayal.
But it's definitely one of those, like, I'm not sure why you're so beat up about it. You were, like, a low-level goon, man.
Yeah.
But, point is, he comes in, he's like, oh my god, what the hell is happening? And he's like, I want to go find Arakawa. I need to know what's happening. And so he do.
Sort of.
One thing leads to another. After finally meeting him inside a restaurant during a big meeting, he gets shot by Arakawa and dumped in the trash.
Literally, just thrown in the garbage.
You belong in a garbage can. And so begins the story of Ichiban Kasuga. Proper this time.
Yes.
And then what follows next is he meets a man named Namba. They try to get work because they're homeless. And what we ultimately end up doing is getting caught. They get caught alongside Adachi, who got discharged for this stunt that he pulled, combined with a whole bunch of other stuff, is basically fired before his pension kicks in.
And he has no savings, so he's fucked. More on that later.
There's more on that later. There's a lot more on this later. And they get caught into this giant conspiracy that leads to ultimately why Ichiban ended up in Yokohama in the first place. Yeah, they're in Yokohama. We should have probably mentioned that.
Yes.
But basically, the whole thing... we're not going to bore you with all the details because, like, it's more of, like, this is set up, like... We're not going to tell you why they know certain things. But the point is... it all leads to them ending up in Yokohama and getting caught in this giant conspiracy about counterfeit money and what that generally means for Japan, what that means for the head of the ruling political party, and how it plays into the schemes of a man named Ryo Aoki, who is the founder of an activist group called Bleach Japan.
And you will grow to... Well, no, I'm not going to say you will grow to hate them. I think most folks hate them right out the gate.
I think most people hated them from, like, day one, because they were unlikable. They're presented as very unlikable from the get-go.
They're reprehensible on purpose.
Yeah. But they are like, we're going to get rid of the gray zones. And as we learn a lot of the grays from the very early part who lives in that gray zone, we'll talk more about the politics aspect a bit. We're just kind of getting through the stuff. Got to get through the weeds first.
Yes.
And basically what we learn is for each character is like, we pick up some more party members, we stop a gang war, we discover that the Omi Alliance was able to move in because the Tojo clan was forced out due to insider information provided by Arakawa, which is like, what? But as we learn is that this is actually like a double ploy. Because all this was part of the plans of Ryo Aoki, who we discover, because Ichiban knows who he is that it's actually Masato, who has changed his name, his look, and has leg.
He can use his legs now.
Which is weird.
He always had legs, he could just walk on them now.
He has leg.
He has leg. And yeah, Ichiban recognizes him. It's like, and to Ichiban's credit, Aoki looks super different. Like it's amazing what just like shaving your beard and getting a haircut and different clothes can do.
Yeah, no, and also in turn, like maybe a few extra pounds on the face.
Yeah. And like the fact that he's like not constantly scowling and speaking in monotone.
Not looking like he's miserable every 5 seconds.
Yeah, like Aoki really, really changed. So kudos to Ichiban for figuring it out right away.
You can tell via the eyes if you look closely enough, but it is like, it makes sense that Ichiban, who's been sort of like Masato's major caretaker, other than his father, it makes sense that he would know. But it is interesting.
And so we realize, it's like, what is a former Yakuza doing in the Japanese government now? How is he doing this?
In fairness, I will say, Masato was never officially Yakuza, but he is the scion of one.
Yes.
And basically has the entirety of one of the two largest Yakuza families at his beck and call. Is weird. And as we go down that road, we learn that he has a plan to become the new party chair by exposing that the aging other one. He's not super important.
Ogikubo.
Ogikubo. He's not super important he's important in like the grand scheme of things, but he's for this story kind of just a side character.
And the very short version of like the thing that he threatens to out Ogikubo for is that Ogikubo was guilty of basically counterfeiting, aiding in counterfeiting that was like being involved with the E-Gen 3.
Yeah, so basically in Jinsho, that's the fictionalized version of Yokohama that we spent time in. There's a triad, the Liumang. There is
The Gomi Jewel,
the
which
Gomi
is the
Jewel, which is this Korean mobsters who have basically were those left behind by the Jing Wong Mafia that was more important to earlier games. You don't need to know much about them. It's not that important.
and these guys, the Gomi Jewel, are information brokers.
Yeah.
They know everything that's going on in the city, and that's their currency.
Yeah. And the Seiryu clan, which is the local Yakuza clan, and that's all you really need to know about them in the grand scheme of things.
But Ogikubo was involved in kind of like allowing the counterfeiting to go on because he benefited from a lot of it.
It basically a lot of his funding comes from this counterfeiting and or letting it go. And basically it's a whole long conspiracy thing. That's all you really need to know.
A lot of this game is interesting, like without explaining too much. It's interesting in the ways that it explains, like, well, why do politicians and law enforcement turn a blind eye to the local criminal activity? It's like because it's like even if they're not directly benefiting monetarily from it, it's like it benefits them in some way to turn a blind eye.
Yeah, it's as we find out, like part of the reason why the Omi Alliance were able to move into Kamurocho so fast was because suddenly, with the Tojo clan out of the picture, the local areas of Kamurocho is basically like suddenly lawless because one of the things the Tojo clan did was kind of keep order from a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what happens. It's basically like, oh shit. Like, as much as we don't like the Yakuza, says society, they kind of serve a purpose in all of this, whether they like
They
it or not.
do. And they get into that, especially with things like the gray zones.
Yeah. Which we'll get into sort of that a bit more as we talk about themes and thoughts. But basically, as we learn, is that Ryo Aoki, aka Masato Arakawa, is secretly using the Yakuza to basically front his shit so that he can become party chair and basically be the most powerful man in the country. Not by being prime minister, but by basically being the head of the party that the prime minister is attached to. Because that actually gives him more control over what happens in politics. And what we learn is that, the Yakuza, basically, Watase, explain who Watase is real quick, for those who don't know.
Watase is, oh gosh, how do I explain this?
He is the head of the Omi Alliance.
Mm-hmm. Masaru Watase.
He was in, I believe, Yakuza 5.
Yeah.
And basically, I'm not as familiar with 4 and 5 as you are.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, a lot of the plot of 5 is basically keeping him in charge of the Omi Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's actually, like, not a dick.
He's a fairly level-headed person, and that's kind of his thing.
The thing is, the thing about Watase is that he is willing to play ball because he realizes for the Yakuza to keep on thriving, he's gonna have to play some ball.
Yeah.
And that means working with the Tojo clan to some degree and not being petty about the rivalry. And some people in the Omi Alliance don't like that because grudges die hard.
Watase is one of the few who can realize that the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
And as times are changing, the Yakuza needs to change with it, which is why him and Daigo, who is Daigo Dojima, he's the current head of the Tojo clan, he's the 6th head, and well, he's not the worst one by any stretch of the imagination.
He's Daigo's biggest flaw is that he's just a little cringe.
He's a bit cringy, but in a good way.
Yeah.
The problem is he's the head of the Tojo clan through every like bad thing that happens from like Yakuza 2 onwards.
He just he gets kind of a bad role.
Yeah, it's like I'm in charge of when all these bad things happen, whether I want them to be or not. Like, sorry, Daigo, you were never replaced because you're the youngest character here to be in charge. But basically what we learn...
kind of a reasonable sort.
Yeah. Basically what happens is him and Watase actually have a plan to dissolve both Yakuza families because, like, they can't get us with all these weird new anti-Yakuza laws if we don't exist. And so they do, it causes a big stir, and it causes a lot of Ryo Aoki's plans to kind of go up in smoke, which causes him to put a hit on his father, who dies, because he's one of the main architects of this plan in the first place. And that's basically what leads to the end game, which we'll talk about towards the end.
Yes.
We're skipping over a lot of stuff, mostly because... like, it's very easy to get lost in the weeds in all of this, which I think is a fair thing to say.
Yeah, it's a twisty, turny kind of plot. Like, there's lots of intrigue and scheming and backbiting going on. It
does something...
to
I think the best way to put it, it does a lot of things that... One of the things about the Yakuza games that I have come to both expect, love, and also be annoyed by is that there's going to be some weird-ass twists involved.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those weird-ass twists are, like, really good. Like, oh, the current head of the Tojo clan and the scion for the Omi Alliance are both not from Japan. They're both Korean.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least, in, I think, Ryuji's case, Korean-Japanese.
Yes.
If I remember correctly. It's been a while since I played 2. But, like, the point is, and also the half or full brother of a different character. That part's kind of weird. Interesting, but kind of weird. But, like, that's like, oh my. Or, oh, the owner of this vacant lot is this woman that Majima was sent to kill, but didn't. Ooh. And sometimes these twists are, it's a battleship. Yes, that's literal. Yes, it's weird.
The secret of Onomichi.
Not what you'd expect. I didn't. I did not put 2 and 2 together because 2 was a fish.
I wouldn't have guessed.
I wouldn't have guessed because I couldn't think it would be that absurd sounding. It makes sense in context, it's just weird. But this is a game where the twists make sense and are interesting.
Yeah, it's like it's a little convoluted trying to just explain it flat out, but it makes sense within the game.
Yeah, within the context of the game itself, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's just that there's a lot of... This game isn't super long. It really isn't, but a lot does happen in it. Which is a very fair thing to say, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree.
But, like, what happens is that we have our deal, and basically the game ends with Ryo Aoki basically being ousted for who he really is, and then... that's basically it. There's more to it than that, and we're going to talk about that, but that's basically the overview of what happens. And I think that's a summary of the plot. So now let's get into the weeds. Let's really dive in.
Oh boy.
Where do you want to start, actually?
You
know what? I think I know where we should start.
Okay, go ahead. What's up?
I think we should talk about about the biggest thing about this game that makes it different from all the other Yakuza games so far, and that's the fact that this is an RPG.
Yes, Stross, what did you think of the different play style?
So, for those who don't know, real quick before I answer the question, is that previous Yakuza titles were action beat 'em ups sort of in the vein of something like Golden Axe. Sort of. Like, you would get into an encounter, you would fight people, and you'd get ranked on how good you did, and be like, oh, cool, look at me going as Kiryu, beating up random thugs who challenged me to a fight.
Yeah.
But in
And you had different, like...
Oh, yeah. You had different fighting styles.
different fighting styles,
yeah.
like, yeah.
Fighting styles, over the years that they have changed names, but you have, like, the fast one, the big, strong one, and then the one that's kind of the in-betweener, and then the one that's, like, all three combined to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
And those were fun. They were always fun, but for some reason they decided, no, let's make this an RPG. We're gonna wear our inspiration from Dragon Quest on our sleeve, and even Ichiban himself, like, envisions all of his fights like it's a game of Dragon Quest. It's very goofy.
Yeah, that's the context through which he views life.
Because he's a nerd. And we love him. But I remember when it was announced, I was like, this is weird. I did not see this coming. I was all for it. Because not so secretly, I never told anyone this, but I'm like, I've been wanting an RPG where, like, everything happens in the real world. And was, like, relatively normal. For, like, years. What about you?
I love it. Like, I was pretty down when they mentioned that it was going to be an RPG inspired sort of combat, because I like that. I like that kind of game.
Yeah.
It's something I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I was not disappointed.
No, I wasn't either. We'll talk a bit more about the gameplay in a second. I also would say the general reaction to most people was understandable skepticism.
Yeah, because it's different.
It wasn't as different. This is like the, not 7th game. This is like, including like 3 spin-offs, maybe 4. I just don't remember when Lost Judgment came out.
Mm-hmm.
In relation to 7. But it was like, at this point, it's been around like 10 games of it being like, the last time they really changed up the gameplay style, it did not go over so well.
Yeah.
And that's Dead Souls, which is the zombie game. Yes, this has the zombie game. Don't ask.
I remember Dead Souls.
It's not great. It's not great. It's not like the worst game ever, but it's not well liked for a reason.
But I think the thing that made the style change work is because Ichiban's a different character.
I think that's part of it, but also because they actually, like, went all in on it.
Yeah, it's like it's grounded. It uses like the tone of the universe to its favor. You know, you're fighting just like, you know, the kind of dudes you'd meet on the street, but it's got that flavor to it. It's got that, you know, fantasy RPG flavor.
Yeah. Like, I think what really makes it work in the end is less so that it's like it understands that, like, it because the Yakuza games are inherently goofy, it's able to use that inherent goofiness, because the joke about the Yakuza series that everyone does is like, Yakuza is a serious crime drama while showing the most goofy bullshit that could possibly happen.
Especially the side stories. The side stories are famously silly.
They are. They are incredibly silly.
And I think the other thing is that it's the tone, by and large, it's silly, it's goofy, but it can veer really easily into being kind of fucking badass too, when it wants to be.
Yakuza as a franchise is incredibly able to deal with incredible tonal shifts with no issue. It's kind of impressive just how easily this series can just, like, shift how it feels, no problem.
Yeah.
But anyway, at the end of the day, I feel like this change in gameplay was also good because it's been like 9 games with only one that's different.
And it's refreshing.
Yeah, it was refreshing. People really liked it. And like it leaned into the fact that this was other outside of just like the goofy aspect of things happening because of Ichiban's own like thought process.
Yeah.
Everyone acted like everyone was still just basically fighting as people in the real world. Just turn based. It was neat. People thought it was neat. It definitely is flawed in certain ways, and we'll get into that. We might as well talk about it now. I think the first major problem is this game has job classes. They're really silly and neat. You're not gonna really use them.
You don't really, there's not much of a reward to trying the different job classes. It's you don't I think that it's fair to say you don't really feel motivated
Well,
to try different stuff.
well, the problem that this game has is that most of your party members, who we will talk about because you get more than the ones that we've mentioned, don't really benefit from changing their class with with a few exceptions.
Hmm.
And like outside of like your first three party members, most of them don't really need to be shifted into anything else outside of like a couple of situations. And that's kind of just the inherent problem with the game. It's just that it's a really good game. The job class system isn't bad. It's just that they're not good enough to make you change character's starting job class with like one character who desperately needs to be moved out of their starting job class.
Yes.
And that's hilariously Seiko, who is one of the two female party members, but that's only because she's a white mage in a physical combat class first, and it's just like you weren't meant for this class.
No, let's get you fixed, sweetie.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's no one's fault. It's not one of those things where anyone's like mad. It's just outside of a couple of cases, like you get all these characters and you don't really have to shift them out of their starting job class. Like a couple of characters can go into something else, but like you get one character who you'll just never change out of his job class.
So, while we're talking about them,
Yeah.
I want to discuss the party itself.
Right. So first things first, let's just name who they are. The first one we meet is technically Adachi, who is a detective, who after a guy in an investigation was sent to prison falsely. Now he was the one guy to stick up for this guy
Yeah.
because he's like, no, this isn't the right guy. We don't have the right guy. We need to do some more work. And everyone else was like, no, we're not. And he's like, and that's how he ended up being a DMV worker because he was like, we should do the right thing. And everyone's like, no, we're going to do the wrong thing.
Because we're corrupt.
Yes. And then you have the next party member you get is a man named Nanba.
Namba.
Namba. Namba.
Nanba is a former nurse.
Is a former nurse. He is the guy who basically saved Ichiban's life after getting shot. Because he applied stitches with like fishing line.
Yeah.
I'm surprised Ichiban wasn't horribly infected.
And Nanba's interesting because, like, Nanba is homeless right away because, like, Ichiban gets dumped in the trash near a homeless encampment, and that's how Nanba finds him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Yakuza 7 did actually a pretty commendable job of treating its homeless characters like people, which is like maybe sounding like I'm damning it with faint praise, but
no, I have a way to put it. This is probably one of the few stories you're going to read and or watch where the main characters interact with not only homeless people, but the treatment of said homeless people, and homelessness is handled with a very kind lens.
yeah, there's dignity there.
Yeah.
And it's not treated as like a punchline or And I mean, and even Ichiban himself struggles with things like, gainful employment and having a home. And I don't know, it's one of those things about the game I think is interesting. But
Yeah.
anyway,
We'll talk more about that in a bit. We're going to talk about sort of this theme stuff in a bit because there's a lot to talk about there. We're just kind of getting past all the crunchy bits.
but Nanba is this curmudgeonly, dour, he's very cynical. He's seen some shit. He's really hard on himself.
Yeah, I mean, to contrast to Adachi, who's a lot less hard on himself, who's much more of like a class of like good detective who got forced out by being a good detective.
Yeah.
And then they meet after their initial big thing to deal with the Saryu clan. They run into the sister of a woman that they're helping by the name of Seiko. I'll let you take
And
care of this part for a bit. About
Seiko tends bar. She has a twin sister, and Seiko is very like she's a dynamite bitch. I love her. She she doesn't take anyone's shit. She's very like straightforward, blunt. And like she's very very caring. But she definitely does it in kind of like a tough love way.
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is Seiko is sort of this not young woman. She's older-ish woman. Her age
Like
is
late 20s, early 30s.
yeah. Her age is not really known. It's really they never state how old she is, but she's probably the youngest member of the party. Who's we'll discuss this other person in a bit. But she's this youngish lady. Like I would say she's probably 27 at youngest.
Yeah.
But that's only because they don't really mention how old she is. Like old enough to be a working woman in the world.
Yeah, and she's, and she deals with a lot of bullshit. She's this woman who's like she's very like very independent, very fending for herself, very like trying to take care of like looking out for her sister and her dad in kind of like shitty circumstances.
Yeah.
But I really like Seiko. She's
Yeah.
great. Stross,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
there?
Oh, I'm still here.
Sorry. I didn't hear you for a second.
Yeah.
But
No, I hadn't said anything. That's why you didn't hear me.
no,
I was just letting you go.
Seiko generally, she's like I don't know. She's very, very no nonsense, very to the point. And I think contrasts very nicely with Ichiban because like he's so sweet and thinks the best of people, and she's very like very suspect of everyone, and understandably so. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, no. And she's very interesting because we don't really get a lot of like female characters throughout the Yakuza games, not because there's like oh, these games are sexist. I mean, we could talk about that as well. We'll talk about that.
It's a very boys franchise.
There's a lot of it's very much a men doing men things.
It's a very manly series.
Yeah, it's very men doing manly things that are manly.
Some manly guys doing manly things.
Yeah, but I mean, it also makes sense because this is usually like Yakuza stuff is not even in like I don't know how much other Yakuza. I don't know how many Yakuza media you see outside of these games, but like you don't see a lot of women involved with Yakuza stuff outside of being like tangentially
Girlfriends.
involved. Girlfriends, wives, daughters. You know, the usual stuff.
So Seiko joins our party,
And then
and then
they go through, that's when they get most of it. The next party member you're probably going to get, depending on how you play, is probably Eri. And we're just going to be about her real quick because her whole thing is involved with like the goofy B plot thing that they like putting in these games. Which one's your outside of the cabaret clubs, Sardo? Which one's your favorite weird B plot?
oh, I do enjoy Ichiban Confections.
Yeah, the story of Ichiban Confections, the company Ichiban works for.
Oh, we've got another guy we got to talk about too. Speaking of, but we're on Eri right now.
Yeah, I'm going with this Eri first because she has the least to do with the actual plot. She's the guest party member, like she's played by a woman who's literally named Eri. She was the fan voted in one. I don't know why. She just is.
And she's adorable.
No, I like her. I don't want this to make this sound like I don't like her.
I think Eri is the most normal of the party members.
Yeah, because she's not really like because she's like a specialized side character. She's not really involved with the main plot, so she's just kind of there.
She does give us our other chicken mascot, though.
Yes,
Omelette. The other important girl in our party.
Yes, this is true. Eri is sort of just like the sweetheart one who she's basically a ninja, which is hilarious.
And she also has a very horny grandma.
Yes, we love her stuff. But
her grandma is constantly hitting on Ichiban, and I
more
love
accurate that or trying to set up her granddaughter with Ichiban. Maybe both.
Maybe both. Probably both.
Probably both. It's great. We love her.
But after Eri, we are introduced to one man you might know or have heard of before if you played the other games, Joon-gi Han.
Yeah, Joon-gi Han.
A very handsome man in a very shiny black coat.
Yeah.
And it always cracks me up a little bit how like characters in the game go out of their way to point out that Joon-gi's really handsome.
Like we have to keep telling you that this is it's just like no, we got to tell you he's hot.
That guy's really good looking. And it's like guys and girls pointing out how handsome he is too. So it's equal opportunity. But Joon-gi works for he works with the Gomi Jewel. He's kind of the manservant, the right hand arm man of the most beautiful lady in Yakuza 7,
which is saying something. This game is
and
not
that's
short on.
That's Song-hui.
Song-hui, leader of the Gomi Jewel, the first female lead since Yayoi was temporary head of the Tojo clan 2.
And she is very beautiful and very mean.
Very mean. Doesn't do a lot in this game. It's mostly exposition, but who cares?
But every time she's on screen, it's like, thank you. But Joon-gi joins our party, and he was actually a body double for the previous Joon-gi Han. That is not his real name. It's not his real identity. He had his father actually subjected him to horrible plastic surgery so he would look exactly like this other man who was in charge of the Jingun Mafia, so he could die in his place if need be. And of course the first guy ended up dying anyway.
Yeah, Uh, so there's a whole thing about that. We'll talk more about him in a bit. He is the guy we mentioned that you will never change the class of because you won't.
He has guns. Actual guns.
Yeah, he uses gun.
And he's kind of the assassin character type. And he's just like very, very stoic, very like very reserved. I always think it's funny, there's a big emotional reunion scene in the story between a lot of the main cast. And everybody's hugging each other and crying. And Jungi's just kind of like standing off to the side. Like, okay.
No, Jungi, we should mention, is also part of some of the best comedic moments because he's not like flat acted. He just acts so stoic that
Yeah,
he creates some very hilarious moments and also chimes in the funniest times.
he's a master of comedic timing. He's devastatingly funny in that way that only really reserved people can be.
Mm-hmm. And it's just it's so much fun. Yes. And then finally, our last party member is Zhao.
Zhao!
Tian Yu. Or Yo, I'm not... They never say his last name, so I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced.
But, yeah, he's...
Or is that his first name?
He's our other friend who we get.
He is... I'm trying to decide the best way to say this. His outfit should make him look stupid, but it doesn't.
He is dripped the fuck out.
He is... When the kids say drip, this is what they mean.
You know that he's got some special charisma going on because only he could wear basketball shorts over leggings and make it look not only deliberate, but good.
Somehow, some way it works.
But he's great. I love him. He's kind of the leader at the time of the Liu Meng. That changes because shit happens. Yeah, but
we'll get there.
He's voiced by Robbie Daymond, which is another thing this has in common with Persona 5.
There's several Persona actors in this game, actually.
And I think I can say this. I'm allowed to say this. He's a gay little man.
He's definitely one of those like suspect characters at times.
Is he, Kasuga-kun. just the way he talks to Ichiban, it's like, okay, hey dude.
Yeah, it's definitely like his sexual preference is definitely ambiguous. Whether or not it is or not is kind of never really touched upon because it never does.
No,
he's neat though.
I think he's neat. He also likes to cook. He's very good at it.
He's one of the two characters we can confirm can cook in this game.
Had he not been involved in a life of crime, he would have become a chef.
Probably.
And that's actually a class you can make him.
And he's the only character who can make it work. Everyone,
yes.
It's a terrible class, and only he's the character with the stats to make it work. But yeah, those are our party members. We like all of them. They're all neat. They're fun. Like, this is a really fun party.
I love their dynamic. They're so funny.
Yeah. It's like everyone is like just the right amount of like willing to make fun of the other.
Yeah, the way they roast each other and like especially the way everybody gets on Adachi for being an old fart.
And like he keeps like mentioning, "Oh, I feel old." It's like, well, if you're gonna keep doing that, I'm gonna keep making fun of you for it.
It's like, okay, people.
Yeah, absolutely fun times. It's definitely one of those things where like the party's fun, everyone has a great dynamic. Each character is interesting, which is hard to do.
It is.
Like it's very easy to make these each character boring. Like we played enough RPGs where sometimes the character just gets absolutely screwed over by the writing. Like I don't know about you, but like since we were talking about Persona 5, like Haru got screwed over by screen time, or well, more lack thereof.
She did. Like there was not enough there.
Whereas everyone here's got plenty of time, plenty to do. They're fun. There's no point where I go like, well, I don't know why this character's our party member. They don't do anything.
And I really like all the kind of like the bond events and like the stuff you do to get to know your party members better. It's all really well written and it's thoughtful. And I don't know. I like the way everything plays.
And you have these in-game discussions like every so often. There's like the game will prompt you, press this button and hear what the characters have to say about whatever they're looking at. And some of them are legitimately funny. Like there's a great event where if it's cold out, like because I think the game takes place mostly in like the latter half of the year, I believe. I just don't know when the Japanese election cycle is. Surprisingly, in a country I don't live in, I don't know when their elections happen.
But it looks like it's in the latter half of the year for most of it.
Like just based off the way people dress, it's definitely looks like it's not summertime anyways. Like maybe early fall.
But yeah, there's like lots of conversations, and I don't know, it's a little Seinfeldian. The way some of them play out, it's funny. And it's
the one I was about to talk about was like Seiko says like, "Oh, I should have worn tights," and Adachi decided it's like, you know what, this is the time to ask him, what's the difference between tights and stockings? And he gets an actual answer. He's like, "Oh, that's all it is? I didn't know that. That's neat." Which it is.
It is.
It is. It's just great, and it's just like it goes down to like the difference between boxers and boxer briefs, and then Namba's like, "What about shorts?" And it's like, like the game is willing to be. These characters act like people who actually talk to each other.
Yeah.
These people do in fact hang out. They do karaoke with each other.
They're friends who spend time together.
Yes. And that's what makes the game fun.
And they're all very endearing on their own. Like even Jungi always surprises me a little bit pleasantly because it's like, he's this assassin, he's this, not just career criminal, but like, he's been kind of like forced into this from like childhood with everything. And he's still like very funny and very like personable in his way.
Yeah, no, like in spite of everything, Jungi, who could have been super boring, is still like funny, willing to like do stuff.
And he's willing to kind of like open up.
He's also willing to play along with jokes. Like there's a great like statement where like Itachi's like, "Well, I'm gaining weight. I'm trying to like be better about it." And Jungi's like, "I can help you out." And it leads on to this whole thing of like this really insane plan involving the Gomichul surveillance network. And he's like, "Yeah, no, actually, I'll stick to running." And it's just like, if he was a boring like normal assassin character, he would never have said any of this.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about the character writing is that nobody in the party is above being like poked fun at.
Mm-hmm. Everyone here is great. Every character here is great. I like all of them.
A thoroughly lovable cast.
There's not a single character in this that's like bad.
Also, real quick,
Mm.
since we're talking about friends and allies, I want to talk about Nick Ogata.
Okay, fine. You can talk about Nick Ogata. We might as well talk about Nick. This is your Nick Ogata corner. Get us started.
I love Nick Ogata. Nick Ogata he's a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, he is a man of financial knowledge who helps out Ichiban. He helps Ichiban first of all by like teaching him how to use a smartphone.
In
But
defense of Ichiban, when he went into prison, phones did not look like this.
no. It's been a long time.
Yeah. He was in prison from 2000, literally the start of 2001 to the start of 2019.
Yeah.
A lot changed.
But Mr. Ogata kind of gets himself into like some mild hot water because he sells these other Yakuza guys like this piece of real estate that they were like because they were trying to get like basically like money from protection money, and he's like, well, I'll just sell you the club. And they do a really bad job running it and they lose money on it and they're all pissed off at him. But Nick Ogata he's this, oh my god, just Google him because he's very flamboyantly dressed. And he's wonderful. He wears loafers. He has an ascot. He has like this natty little mustache. And he looks very camp, and he's completely unbothered at like being threatened by criminals or whatever, and he's just a cool guy. He's so cool. And I love him. He's great. I love him so much.
And
anyway,
he's shockingly important to a lot of things that happen in this story that in ways you would not expect.
he's a valuable ally. He does stuff.
He is basically a very important, a shockingly important man who's very good at business.
He's very talented at it. He knows his stuff.
Yeah, sir.
But yeah, anyway, I had to say it because I really love him and he's a fun part of the story.
He's also a part of the Ichiban confection stuff as being your financial backer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's very fun. So I think the best way to put it is every character is fun. Especially Ichiban, who is very likable, because that was sort of one of the big question marks going into this game, actually.
Because we love Kiryu.
Yeah, we do. Like, the problem is Kiryu is also very restricting. Because there's only so many stories you could tell with him that you hadn't already done. That's what happens when you're the protagonist of, like, 10 games.
Huh.
But yeah, so everyone's like, we don't know about this Ichiban guy. And then by the end of it, we're like, actually, no, we love and protect Ichiban with our lives. Fan base was like, no, we love him. Everyone was like, no, this is good, actually.
He's our guy.
He's our man. He's not Kiryu, but he's still our man.
And I gotta say, I love Kiryu so much, but I think I actually like Ichiban more.
Ooh. I will say this. We're only going off of one game, so there's enough time for Ichiban to see what happens with Ichiban. But as of right now, yes, I'm okay with anyone saying that. And also, it helps that, well, Kiryu does show up.
Oh, he does.
Yep.
Yeah, we get to see a lot of the old veterans return in this one.
More on that in a bit, because in the criticism section, you'll understand what I mean when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this game is fun and enjoyable and interesting.
And, like, I think every character is written effectively, because while I don't love every character, it's not that I don't love in the way that it's like they were poorly utilized or what have you. It's that some of the characters are lovable and awesome and others are fucking loathsome. in the best way.
Yeah, and we'll talk about one of them
And
in a bit.
yeah, we'll
But
get there.
we'll get there. The point is, like, the character writing in this game is really good because not every Yakuza game has, like, the most memorable characters on the planet.
But this one does.
Like, I would argue, like, when it comes to the extended Yakuza stuff, you don't see a lot of characters from 3.
Mm-hmm.
And you only see some of the ones from 4 crop up here and there. You see a lot more from 5.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot from 6, but that most of the spin-offs were made before 6 was released, so we're gonna cut some slack there.
But this one,
I'm gonna be nice that, you know, in the case, and also, like, most of the fun characters from 6, it would be kind of weird to see them again.
This one hits a home run, though.
Yeah, not because they're bad characters, it's just that, like Nagumo lives in Hiroshima. He's not gonna show back up. He's not leaving there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I actually, like, Nagumo, I think, was one of the more popular characters from 6 by the end of it.
Yeah.
But, like, they wouldn't be able to show up.
Right.
Because there's no reason for them to show up. But, like, the 4 characters and the ones who are still around, some of them show up, some of them don't. I don't think I've seen any of the 3 characters in anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of, like, the orphanage kids, but that doesn't count.
Yeah, but overall, seven does a really good job with its character writing. It's solid. It does what it's supposed to, and it's very enjoyable.
Absolutely. Whereas, I feel like this is a good time to start talking about some of the problems with this game a little bit. Let's do a little compliment sandwich, shall we?
Yeah.
And let's start with one of the problems of the gameplay specifically, and that is, you just don't really play around with the character classes. I know we've talked about that already, but we really should, like, drive home the fact that you really do not use them.
There's just not a lot of incentive to.
Well, like, the first problem is it takes a while to get anything out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you spend a long time working to... I think the best way to put it is that the issue with them is that when you get there, you... Like a great example of this is Ichiban gets 2 major character classes. He gets Freelancer and then Hero. And you're never going to take him out of Hero.
No.
After a certain... Or at least you shouldn't. Or, like, a great example of this is Junji Han. He's going to be Hitman, and you're never going to change him from Hitman.
Because Hitman is good.
It's good.
And Hitman's effective. It's complementary of his abilities.
And it also, more importantly, it's the only class that lets you use gun.
And there's no reason to change it.
There really is 0 reason to change it. There's also, like, a lot of the other classes are kind of lackluster, which is another problem.
Yeah.
Like, they're not bad, but they're lackluster. They're not very good. A great example of this is, like, Bodyguard. The only useful thing about Bodyguard is it gives you a sword. It's just... It's not great.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of... Like, a great example of this, like, the only character who desperately needs to get out of their starting job class is Seiko, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Like, you could put Adachi into, like... whatever the more extreme version of his main character class is called.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what it's called. Not really important. And that's just
But
kind of
it's
that's just kind of the problem with the game is that like these job classes and like it takes so long to get anyone to level to like rank 30. Ooh, excuse me. Like
just like there's not really a point.
yeah, there's no point in changing it because it takes so long to get anyone anything out of it. And there's 99 ranks. Unless you're doing the post game like super hard stuff, there's no point. Like none.
Yeah.
There's no point in like grinding beyond like 30 other than the stat boosts, and even then it's not really worth it. And that's only if you're going for like the bonus stuff after the game is over, which you don't even need to do. That it's bragging right rewards, and that's the problem. Unlike, say, the other problem with the gameplay is there's this one point where there's a massive level spike towards the end of the game. So most of the game, this is actually interesting that this is kind of a low-level RPG. I think that's fair to say.
It is, yes.
Because if you play most RPGs, you usually end up at like whatever the max level is or near it. And this is a game where the game finishes around in the 60s.
Yeah.
Which by comparison to say like for like Persona 4 and 5, you're probably going to finish the game near 90, which is near the level cap unless you grind a lot. So it's like you're playing the game. So unlike like say Persona or like Final Fantasy or even Dragon Quest where you're going to finish towards the level cap, you're not.
And yeah, and a lot of this kind of like springs itself on you without a lot of warning.
And like the thing
At
is,
least
when you return to Sotenbori again, because we can never truly get away, we'll always return to Osaka. What happens is that you've been probably most of the fights have been in the 30s in terms of numbers, and this is the first time you've been in the and you start running into enemies in the 40s, which is fine. You one of the good things about this game is damage output is pretty high even at lower levels, so you're not like pressed to do damage. And then you get into one boss encounter where the bosses are suddenly level 50 and absolutely will wipe the floor with you. And the only hit you're supposed to get this is a point where it's like, here's the battle arena. You can grind here.
and it's not really much of a warning.
It's not a warning. Because I remember both of us have basically said the same thing. We both just went into the Omi Alliance HQ not realizing what was in store and then learning, oh, we should have done the thing.
Yeah, and we got our asses beat.
Because you get into a boss fight with... Okay, this is great because every single fan of the series knew exactly who we were fighting the moment his shoe showed up. It's Majima because no one else wears those shoes. It's so funny. Like, I was rewatching like a different streamer's highlights, and she freaks out because the moment she sees the shoe, she starts screeching like, "It's Majima!" Because you and me both know, and every other Yakuza fan, that those specific wingtips belong to Goro Majima.
Yeah.
No one else.
You would recognize those shoes anywhere.
Yeah. And that fight sucks. Like, I'm not trying to sound like a negative Nancy. But this is one of like the 3 boss fights in the game that really aren't that fun to go through.
That fight is bullshit.
The reason why that fight sucks is number 1, the game, like, you're probably going to get to Sotenbori at level 36-ish, around it. And the game needs you to be like level 48 to 50 to do this boss fight. And even then, you have to kind of hope that like things go your way a little bit. There's this problem. The game doesn't really do a good job of letting you see what works and what doesn't at times. Like, there's no way to analyze your enemies out in combat.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be nice. Infinite Wealth hopes. Fingers crossed.
Please.
Please. Because it's... And I want to make this clear. We're not hating on the game, by the way. It's just that this boss fight is very noticeable spike in difficulty that the game doesn't ever do before or since. Only time this happens.
Yeah.
The other problem with this boss fight is that it can also be kind of long. This also extends to problems with a boss fight not shortly thereafter, but that one you can cheat a little bit. Because Kiryu's in this game, so you think you're gonna avoid fighting him? Nay, you must fight Kiryu Kazama.
You've got to fight him.
And it's a hard boss fight. I would say this one's better than the Majima one. Because unlike Majima, where Seijima eventually shows up and decides, hey, everybody, wouldn't it be funny if we fought both of them? And the answer is, no, it hurts. Please stop.
I'm going to ruin your day even more.
I'm not allowed to dodge you anymore, so please stop. And he said, no. And they pushed me into a wall.
And then he literally picked up Majima and threw him at you.
Which is hilarious. We loved it.
It's very funny.
We love it, but it's also like, ow.
Their team attack is very funny, but it's also not very funny when it hits you.
Yes, it's funny in the sense that it's cool. But basically the point is, after that, the Kiryu boss fight, you can cheat because Kiryu keeps up his I won't punch women bit. And that extends to your party members. So basically, you could just bring both... Like, as long as you keep Ichiban alive, because this is one of those games where if the main character goes down, you're fucked. Annoying, but doable. I would say it's easier than the Majima fight, but not... But as long as you know what you're doing, it's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember the first time I did that boss fight when I first played the game, it was the worst. I was like, he's resistant to everything. He takes so long to hurt.
He clones himself.
No, that's Majima.
No, that's what I mean, Majima.
I'm talking about Kiryu.
Oh.
Kiryu, if you know what to do in the Kiryu boss fight, it's stupidly easy. It takes a bit because he just has a lot of health.
Yeah.
Unlike the final boss fight, which I'll get to. Oh, I got so mad about that.
It was very frustrating.
The final boss is a one-hit kill move, and unless you perfect guard, and the timing's a bit wonky. And my problem was he aimed for me in that boss fight right at me, first thing, at Ichiban, and killed him. And I'm like, God damn it. Also because Tendo's a fucking sponge.
Oh, yeah.
He has health for days.
Tendo's a brick shithouse.
I guess I think this leads into now talking about good things again. Let's talk about the villains, specifically the new members of the Omi Alliance who we're now meeting, and specifically Ishioda and Tendo, who are the two like leading candidates for top dog after Arakawa for most of this story.
So, in order of introduction, Mr. Reiji Ishioda.
Mr. Nice Hair himself.
He cracks me up. I give this guy a little shit for basically being like Nishitani 2.0. He has a great boss fight. He fights you in like he's operating a wrecking ball.
Yeah, our first introduction to him is trying to kill us with a wrecking ball. Which is a great way to introduce your character, by the way.
It's very fun. He's a hoot. his English dub voice also cracks me up because he's like, fucking Tendo, this fucking guy, hey, I'm walking here.
So they made a decision for the Kansai dialect. So one of the problems with translating Japanese into English is that certain things have certain ways of being translated.
Mm-hmm.
And the Kansai dialect is either translated as a sort of a southern accent or the what's it called? Or like a Brooklyn accent, and they decided to go with
Yeah.
Brooklyn. And by the way, there's a huge like argument in like translation circles of which one's the better way to do it.
Yeah.
And we're not gonna give out our like
I
thoughts on it.
I have no opinion on it because I am not a Japanese speaker.
Mm.
I don't have enough like knowledge of like regional stuff to say one way or the other. I just think Ishioda's dub voice is a hoot.
No, I like it because he has a classic like New York gangster going on. It's like,
you
what's you
fucking
doing?
wise guys.
Yeah, no, fucking wise guys. And you know, it
Bada bing,
worked.
bada boom.
I understand why they went this way because it's like there's two ways to do it. And there's no wrong way to do it as far as I know. We're not experts
Mhm.
on this subject, so we're not going to comment on it.
I have no opinion because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but also like both are fine by me because if you see how it's written out, you can see why both work.
Yeah.
Classic, yes and no.
But Ishioda he's kind of the wild card. He's very like he's violent, he's reckless. Uh
Remember, he tried to kill you with a
he
wrecking ball.
Yeah, and he's kind of a maniac.
He's
And
he's definitely the one who would shoot first, ask questions later.
yeah, he's hot-blooded, he's temperamental, and he's kind of a scary guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Tendo.
Tendo is a former heavyweight boxer, built like a brick. He's the scary one.
He's the one you should be afraid of.
Like Ishioda's scary because he's like big and strong.
He's a wild and crazy guy.
Yeah, and he's the one who's gonna cause problems on purpose. Tendo
though,
causes problems with purpose, which makes him much more terrifying.
and he's pragmatic.
He's the smart one, I think is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's scheming, he's smart, but he also is willing to switch sides whenever he wants.
There's a bit where after like kind of the local alliances meet up to like discuss the future of the Yakuza, and through a tactical move, Daigo dissolves the Tojo and they dissolve the Omi alliance. And there's a big fight, and you're kind of like squaring up, and Tendo's like, well, I'm gonna go with the side that's gonna have more action. And so he sides with the protagonists.
Yeah. He's not because he particularly is with them or against them, but because it's like, well, this is funny.
And it's the thing of like, he doesn't really, like, he's not led by morals, he's led by what's going to be more interesting in the moment and what's going to benefit him.
Which is why he's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he looks cool.
He looks very cool.
And he's big.
They did a good job making him like very imposing without being just like, you know, oh, muscle, big, scary, wild man. He's like, you know, he's very, very polished, very sophisticated looking, and still just like, if you punch that guy, you would break your hand.
Yeah. And also in turn, the other major weakness, and the other major villain here is the exact opposite of the two guys we just talked about. His name is Kume. We need We need to talk about Kume, the most loathable.
Fucking Kume.
Okay, we need to mention this. This is the most loathable man in the entire game.
People talk a lot about somebody who has a punchable face. Kume's the definition of that. Kume is if Ben Shapiro had a Japanese cousin.
And was somehow more punchable.
Yeah, it's somehow just as loathsome. Kume is the ostensibly kind of like the leader, the voice of Bleach Japan. He's whiny, he's
whiny, he's hypocritical.
He's self-righteous.
He clearly only was at least initially in it to look cool.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just he's smug.
I just know his Google search history is wild.
The point is, we should probably talk about what Bleach Japan is now.
Yes,
quick.
let's discuss Bleach Japan.
Yeah, Bleach Japan is a activist group created by Ryo Aoki and Hajime Ogasawara as an activist group to get rid of the gray zones in society. To make a more wholesome world.
Yeah, they're essentially like a movement endorsing gentrification, and they're trying to take out gray zones with things like prostitution and organized crime and that sort of thing. And they're anti-sex work. They're trying to clean out the Yakuza and clean the dirt off the streets and bleach Japan pure, which carries all the connotations that you would imagine.
And he's a dirty little coward who absolutely goes around just being it's actually stated by Osagawara himself that part of the way they got Bleach Japan's numbers up is that they, try to look cool to women.
Mm-hmm.
And Kume is no different.
Yeah, and it's this ostensibly, progressive movement that's trying to better the future of the many, and it's really, they suck. They suck. Nobody likes Bleach Japan. You're supposed to hate them. That's the point.
You basically go through we'll talk more about why in a bit, but the point is Bleach Japan is this activist group. They're annoying. You're not supposed to like them. And Kume is the most unlikable member of them all.
Mm-hmm.
And also not help that Bleach Japan is definitely supported by actual literal organized crime.
Yes. Something that will, actually come to bite said organized criminals in the ass later on, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. And basically, Kume is the most unlikable person in this game, and this includes someone who murders your father figure.
Mm-hmm.
Ryo Aoki himself. Literally an assassin. Named Mirror Face, the actual weirdest part of this game.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Mirror Face.
It's okay, I always forget about Mirror Face because he's not that important except for 2 moments, but boy is it weird. It is one of the funniest, which one do I shoot? Which one knows the law code? The one who doesn't? Okay, that one's Adachi, shoot that one.
That's the Adachi we know and love.
Like hell would he actually know?
You have no idea.
It's like you don't know. You're suck at your job. But yeah, basically, Kume is incredibly unlikable.
He's a twerp.
He's a twerp. He sucks. He's got a stupid haircut.
He does.
Absolutely,
oh my God.
Antagonizes people who don't deserve it. Mocks the dead. He slut shames poor Seiko, and she just slaps. I believe the only reason why she doesn't slap the shit out of him is because Ichiban punches him instead. It's like, no. He doesn't deserve a slap. Let me punch him. Bam. Oh, it's great. Beautiful scene.
But let's get into Aoki.
Yeah, so we need to like I think now is a good time to start getting to Aoki and sort of the real themes of this game. I know, sorry, it took a while. Wait, there's a lot to talk about in this game, despite it not
Yeah.
being that long. Aoki is obviously the fake version of Masato Arakawa. And he's a bastard. Not literal,
He
metaphorical. Actually,
I mean,
that's not true.
no,
he actually is
no,
a real
he's
bastard
literally.
too. Oh, hey,
I mean,
metaphorical
he
and
would
literal.
he would have been a literal bastard either way,
Yeah.
but because can I delve into some spoilers now,
Yeah,
Stross?
absolutely. I mean, we technically already did, but now it's time to delve in even deeper.
We had a baby switcheroo because
Coin locker babies.
Masato Arakawa is not an Arakawa. He is actually the biological son of Joe Sawashiro.
Just so happened that Ichiban. Now, it's implied. They never confirm it, but it's implied that Ichiban is actually Arakawa's son.
It's Yeah, it's very heavily implied that Arakawa is Ichiban's real biological father.
Now, it should be noted that when we say implied, it's like all but it's really more of all but confirmed is probably more
They're
accurate.
talking DNA tests.
Yeah, they're
and
talking like you can confirm this with a DNA test, and the only reason why it doesn't happen is because Ichiban's like that doesn't matter.
no, it's like, and the way he phrases it's like, I have two dads. I have the one at the soapland I was born at that raised me, and I have Arakawa.
Which is very sweet and kind of like emotionally poignant, but it's also like,
Yeah,
you know.
but because there's a switcheroo because it's like, Ichiban and Masato's parents both kind of like running from different things. It's like because Sawashiro and his girlfriend didn't want to be parents, and it was too late to have an abortion, so they're like, we're going to leave the baby in one of the coin lockers at this station, and they have second thoughts, and it's like, the girlfriend's like, no, I'm going back to get him, and just as they get there, they see Arakawa like desperately punching this locker where he hears a crying baby because he thinks he's rescuing his son.
It should be noted that Arakawa in this sequence is voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. He does a great job for the 5 minutes he gets here.
He really does.
He is going hard.
Oh, it's that scene's still like, it's fucking gut wrenching because Arakawa was like frantically punching this locker in, and his hands are bleeding, and he's screaming, and it's really hard to watch.
It's hard to watch, but damn. And basically, the only reason why Masato is still alive is because of Arakawa saving him this way.
Mm-hmm. Because he'd contracted hypothermia from being left in a locker on a cold night.
Because it's January.
And he's a baby. He's a newborn baby.
Unlike Ichiban, who was also put in a locker, but you actually could, and they actually do show this. He is much more bundled up.
Yes. And also, he's just Ichiban, and he's robust.
Yeah, he's much more. Well, yeah, he's Arakawa's son. Have you seen that
Yes.
man? That man took a knife to the face from his mom. It's a tough son of a
Couldn't
bitch.
knock him over with a pail of water.
Damn straight.
But yeah, so there's all that Masato is actually Joe Sawashiro's son. He never finds out.
He sadly never finds out. Ichiban does from Joe himself, because Joe basically tells him this whole story.
Yeah, and that's the reason that Joe started serving Arakawa, is so he could keep an eye on his son from a distance, because he sees that Masato is disabled, probably because of his actions, and he feels immense guilt.
Which is fair.
And fair enough. He did a shitty thing, and now he's kind of paying the price and trying to make up for it in his way.
Yeah, and like Joe's not a good person, but he's an interesting character for this game too.
Joe is fascinating. Like when I say that Joe sucks, it's mostly just that he's mean to Ichiban.
Yeah, and he's very mean to Ichiban.
He's horrible to Ichiban. He's a very mean, bastardly man with a very nice suit. God, he looks so good in his suit. But Joe is interesting. He's complicated. I like his character.
Yeah, and also in fairness to Joe being mean to Ichiban, Ichiban's really bad at being a Yakuza. And when your job is to take care of the books and this guy is making it harder on yourself, I would be pissed off too eventually.
And that's not exactly the kind of job you can be soft on the new guy with.
Yeah. But Joe is a very efficient, effective, terrifying man, but also super interesting.
He is.
He is an interesting guy.
But back to Aoki.
Yeah. Take it
He's also a fascinating character. And I will say it again. I think one of the most like loathsome Yakuza antagonists in that he's very real.
Yeah, like what makes Aoki very similar to hilariously to oh god, what's his full name? Well, it's Shido in the last game. It's like Masashiro Shido. He has
Masayoshi Shido.
Yeah. Is that their plan is basically nearly identical, but like whereas Shido's just like constantly an asshole to makes you wonder like why would anyone ever want to interact with this guy?
Yeah, he's rude to everybody. He's just shitty.
He's just shitty. Aoki, you get it.
You can understand why people would like him. He's he's young for a politician who's amassed as much clout as he has.
He's a 40-something-year-old, generally
42.
Yeah, he's a 42. He's a 42-year-old man. He's generally good looking.
Yeah, clean cut, good looking, seems and when he's like talking to the public, he seems very affable.
Affable, at least to the public.
And like, kind of willing to poke a little fun at himself and seems kind of like, aw shucks, like humble and has like strong convictions. And you think it's like, okay, I could see how people would think this is a good guy.
Yeah, and he's getting rid of the Yakuza, cleaning up the streets, cleaning up Tokyo, like all these things that the people like.
Mm-hmm.
But deep down, he's a bastard. That's great.
And it's just like he's such a piece of shit in such real ways.
Yeah.
It's not like he's not trying to blow up the Tokyo underground. He's not like kidnapping orphans and selling their organs on the black market. He's a selfish piece of shit with political power.
Yeah. And he refuses to back down.
And the other interesting thing, like I'm always really pleased with kind of the way his story ends with like his final confrontation because Ichiban outs him. Ichiban reveals that it's like because Ichiban starts like running as a political opponent to Kume, and then eventually he's like, it puts him in the same circles as Aoki, and he manages to put out there that like Aoki tried to kill Ichiban and his friends.
Basically, Aoki / Masato Arakawa has been absolutely using his bullshit to, and his connections to get rid of people via murder. And Ichiban uses that to his advantage and basically uses it to oust him because he's too thorough. He can't refuse to be like, he knows that Ichiban is probably bluffing, but in the like 0.1% chance that he's not.
He can't take any chances.
Not a single chance can be taken, and that's what ultimately causes his downfall because whoops, Ichiban won.
Yeah. And the other thing about Aoki is that, pardon the expression, his other greatest flaw is that he shits where he eats. He doesn't really build goodwill with any of the people supporting him. Like he makes really grievous enemies of a lot of the Yakuza because he's not ashamed of his past, but he's cynical about it and he's disillusioned because he couldn't hack it in that life.
Yeah, and it basically the best way to put it is that Aoki is someone who's incredibly hurt and trying to just take power for himself because he's
Yeah.
angry.
And again, credit to the voice actor here, who Japanese and English were fantastically done. But finally, like Aoki runs away, and
That's Kosuke Toriyumi for Japanese and Will Young Lee for English, by the way.
awesome, thank you.
Yes.
But Ichiban and Masato have their final confrontation in front of the lockers where they were abandoned as babies. And Masato's like he's got a gun on him and he's got the gun to his head and he is like, it's fucking over. I'm done. And he gives this he never stops being loathsome. He's an awful person. But the speech he gives is still like so powerful that it's like I hated myself for being born in a weak, ugly body, and and I've tried so hard to like change myself, and it's this kind of like disillusionment at hating the way he was born and trying to change it and still feeling like separated from it. And it's like I think Aoki's a really good example of how you can have a villain who's nasty and reprehensible, but has really interesting and human motives,
And
while never
also-
like making what he did okay.
And also while still being deeply sympathetic.
Oh yeah, because
Like-
he's immensely sympathetic.
Like, you get it. You get
Yeah,
how he ended up here. You get why he ended up here and why the world basically much like how it forced guys like Ichiban to be criminals, in this case
Mhm.
Yakuza. You get why he ended up this way.
yeah, you can totally see how it happened.
Yeah, there's no point where you're like, oh, it's not like, but why though? No, you never ask why.
It does a superb job of that, and I'm always really impressed with how he's done.
Mm-hmm. And what makes what also makes this work is, number one, the acting from everyone across the board is great. How everyone looks is great. It's just well done.
It is. And oh my fucking god, like Ichiban in this scene, it just
Both
You
Kaiji Teong, who is the English, and Kazuhiro Nakaya deserve a lot of credit.
and like a character like Ichiban, especially in this particular sort of confrontation, is, I think, hard to get right because he has so much hope and good faith in people, and he's telling Masato, it's like, you can start over, you can change, and you can believe it hearing him talk to him, and it doesn't just sound like a cheesy shonen hero thing. It's like you fully believe it, or at least I can.
I think the best way to really put it, and what makes it really different, and the reason why it works, is because it's not simply cheesy. It is like heart-wrenching and like desperate.
And there is pain in his voice, and there's pain and love, and Ichiban has been through an unbelievable amount of shit, and he still believes in this person.
Yeah. And it just works, is the best way to put it. So I feel like this is a good time to finally talk about theme.
Yes.
So we need to talk about gray zones.
Mm-hmm.
Finally get to talk about gray zones. Sardo, what's an example of a gray zone in this game? There's a couple.
Oh,
I'll let you take one.
A good example of gray zone is, well, golly, how about the Soapland where Ichiban was born?
So basically, soaplands. I don't really know exactly what a soapland is per se.
It is kind of it is a
I know
people
what
who
it,
work at
I,
Soaplands.
well, let me put it this way. I know what it actually is and how it's actually used, but like I don't know what it's supposed to actually do.
It's I don't know. It's like a bathhouse. It's I guess to put it simply, but it's like
I guess you get bathed by pretty girls. I
yeah,
guess
yeah. You get pretty girls to bathe you and other things. But yeah.
But basically, the soaplands are usually just brothels.
Yeah.
They're just legal brothels, but like the brothel part is hush hush, wink wink, nudge nudge.
Mm-hmm.
Or an even probably better example is that we work with a woman named Hamako, who's cool. She's neat.
We love Hamako.
She's the best example of this. We should probably have just gone with her. I'm surprised we
Yeah.
didn't. So Hamako runs what is described as bars and restaurants,
Quote quote.
quote quote, but really they're all just brothels. Everyone knows that they're brothels. But she's not running them to make money. She's running them because the women that works for her are women who are the daughters of illegal immigrants or illegal immigrants themselves, and basically they only have two options: either work for her or work for the various criminal elements across town.
Yes.
And she's like, better me than someone who's going to actively exploit them.
She's looking out for him.
And basically the moment like the game gives them like a supposed better deal, she tells them to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like her whole thing is she's a bit mean, but it's like, no, it's very obvious that she cares.
She's a good lady.
Yeah. Like the moment, like, and the thing is, like, what's a gray zone about it is that it's very obvious that this is a brothel, but in terms of what is legally being served, the food is insert vagina euphemism here, please. Take your pick. A clam, I guess. It's a clam.
People are gonna
restaurant.
be eating something.
It's gonna be some sausage and clams. There we go.
Yeah.
I got it. But yeah, but basically the point is what I think is great. What makes Hamako a great example of what the game's talking about, how gray zones might hold like iffy elements and criminals, but it's also like there's a lot of people here who aren't bad people. They just slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
Is that like
yeah.
Hamako's like, these girls have two options: work for me or work for the various people who will absolutely be worse to them. I much rather it be me.
Yeah, or work for an abusive pimp.
Yeah, and that's basically what happens. And as we learn via the game itself, your options are ultimate. Like when Bleach Japan offers like a deal that looks too good to be true, but if it was true, it would actually be a really good deal. So hey,
Yeah. It's,
politicians, just saying.
Mm-hmm. But it's this thing of, we're offering, the girls who work for Hamako, like, things like, getting their visas and like getting better education and like housing and everything, and all that sounds wonderful, but no, they're actually rounding them up and deporting them.
Which is like, because like what Hamako thought was what it said on paper is like, hey, we're gonna like give you a path to citizenship, we're gonna like put you in a place where you're supported. She was going to be the dorm mother. She was totally fine with that because it's like, this is even better than what I could have done because they got money and I don't.
Yeah.
But sadly, no. No. Nope, nope. Nope, 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 nope,
No.
nope.
It's and that bit is like gut-wrenching too because Hamako's like so fucking heartbroken and like guilty
And
when she finds out what's going
and
on.
the thing that she's guilty of is being duped.
Yeah.
Because you could tell from the start of when you met her to this point on, she only has these women's best interests in mind.
She cares about all of them.
And that's why it hurts her so much, and that's why it's so sad. It's why it's sad. It's also why Bleach Japan is full of shit.
Yeah, but it's this thing of like, you know, if you go into things like gray zones talking about like, you know, well, some of these people are you know, criminals and they do awful things. It's like, well, a lot of these people aren't. And they don't deserve to be punished just because a few of them are like shitty or harmful.
And it's like, okay, I understand that like the Yakuza's there, but what about this homeless dude who just wants a sandwich?
Yeah, and it's like, what about the people who are driven by things like poverty or caring for a sick relative or, you know, any number of things that might lead you in your life to, you know, and there's also the thing too of like a lot of things like homelessness are inherently criminalized.
Or like how a lot of these immigrants are here for a better life, but because they didn't come here the exact right way you want them to, they don't count.
And they're forced into gray zones,
Yeah.
which you want to clean up.
But instead of trying to like fix the underlying problem that created this gray zone, instead you're just trying to nuke it from orbit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're trying to take an orbital laser and go pew, with no sense of whether or not it's good or not.
And I think the party is like a very interesting sampling of different people that are kind of like marginalized within Japanese society. You've got Nanba, who's homeless. You've got Ichiban, who is a literal fucking Yakuza.
And also, like, a former convict, too.
Yeah, former convict.
You have Seiko, who's a woman who is a woman of, you know, generally solid education, but not high
but
means.
She's a single working woman.
Yeah, she's a single working woman in a country that doesn't really like that a whole lot.
Doesn't respect that. You have Adachi, who's like this older guy towards the end of like his viable employment years with no savings.
Due to the fact that he's been actually spending it on helping the kid of the guy who got falsely put into prison and died. So, you know, his money's been going to good things, just oof. Or like Junji Han, a guy who was born basically into a criminal element and had no other options. Same thing with
and
Zhao.
And Jungi also, you know, born to Korean parents in Japan, so having a disconnect both with people from his own culture and people from his birthplace, both who distrust him.
Same case with Zhao. Though less distrust is more of he was born into a position he himself admit wasn't really meant for.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of
and
then there's Eri, who it's kind of the odd one out here.
Yeah, Eri's still like she's a woman in the business world. And Eri's once again, she's a little more normal than the rest of the cast in terms of like she's a little more stable, has a little more support.
Yeah, but it's basically the whole game is basically going like, yeah, gray zones have Yakuza in it and bad people, quote unquote. But there's a lot of people who are there for unfair reasons by society.
Mm-hmm. And shouldn't we be trying to handle those issues in society that push people into the gray zones instead of trying to wipe out the gray zones entirely?
And that's kind of and this is why Yakuza 7 Like a Dragon is better than Persona 5, because one of the things we said in that Persona 5 episode, because I know most of you didn't listen to it because it's 3 hours long.
I don't fault you. It's okay.
No, we understand. I'm just like, God, we really made that thing 3 hours long.
Yep.
Is that one of our biggest criticisms of its writing was that its story, it goes, isn't that corrupt, and then it has no real standing ethos beyond, like, bad people are bad and shouldn't be in politics. Which, I mean, yeah, sure, true, but...
The thesis is that there's corruption in society, and,
that's
you
bad.
know, that's bad, and that's about it.
Yeah, and that's...
And also, like, the protagonists of Persona 5 are also teenagers, so I can understand how there's maybe less of a, and here's what we should do about it, than Yakuza 7.
Yeah, like, Yakuza 7, because its main characters are, like, adults. And not just adults, but, like, mostly older men.
They're adults.
They're
Yeah.
all adults, but, like, specifically, like, older individuals. And I think you would be the first one who agrees with me when I say there is a very big difference.
Oh, massively so. It's people that are particularly kind of reaching the end of their usefulness within society as far as things like capitalism see.
Mm-hmm. Basically, the point we're trying to make is, like, this because one of the things about Yakuza games is sometimes they get a little kid's glove
Mm-hmm.
with the topic at hand. This one doesn't.
Yeah. No. This one, I think it approaches stuff pretty head on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's characters like Kume that tend to be like a little bit cartoonish in terms of like, this guy's clearly a villain. You're clearly supposed to hate him. But the way it tackles things overall, I feel, is effective, and
Yeah.
it's straight into the point.
I agree.
But I really enjoyed, like, I think overall the theme is handled well. It's a very satisfying story to go through.
Yeah, I think really what makes this game really work is that the characters are fun. The story is, one of the problem with some of the Yakuza stuff is that sometimes the story gets a bit too much in trying to, like, do a twist or turn
Mm-hmm.
and be dramatic, and sometimes that, like, hurts the story. Like, even in Yakuza 0, which is one of the other, like, 2 really well written Yakuza games, they're like, it can sometimes get hard to follow. Not this one.
Mm-hmm.
Not this one. I know exactly what's happening, why it's happening, who's where, what, and why.
And Ono Michio is back.
Yeah, Noni Michio's back. Oh no. But
And we actually get to see Ichiban put on the costume. It's so good.
it's great. Honestly, I would say of the RPGs I played in 2020, it is maybe the best one.
Yeah.
And the only reason why it's not higher is that, like, Persona 5 Royal was still really fun to play. But I would say in terms of writing, it is better.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, like, all writing, because, like, I would say character writing is generally pretty good in Persona 5, just haphazard in places. Because, it's like... Well, it also gave you Dr. Maruki, who you love.
I do love Dr. Maruki, but like Persona 5, I think paints with broader strokes. And again, I attribute a lot of that to the age of the characters and kind of the general vibe it's going for.
I also attribute the fact that Hoshino's not as good at writing, like, modern politics. He never has been.
No.
Like, you've seen Persona 4. You know what I mean when I say this.
I do. I do. And I'll be real, I don't expect a lot of cutting societal commentary from a Persona game. Nothing against Persona. It's just not what I expect going in.
Yeah, it's that's why, like, Persona also is this better talking about, like, very broad sort of emotional aspects.
Yeah.
Like Persona 3 being about death, about, like, sort of the transitory nature of death.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what the Death Arcana stands for in the Grand Arcana, you know that death isn't always literal death. It's also just change.
Yes.
And that's sort of what that game's about, and sort of how, like, life, you can't go through life without people dying, and that / things changing. And how that's, something, which is why you should live your life to the fullest and enjoy what you have, because you don't know when things will change. So enjoy your life while you have it now, so that tomorrow, if things change, you can still enjoy it.
Make the most of it. Everybody's dying, bitch. Let's get you some fruit.
Yeah. Or how in, like, Persona 4, like, your personal truth matters more to you and the world than, like, trying to be something you're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit messy about that in Persona 4, but that's the general gist of it. Persona 5 tried to get political, and it didn't really work out as well as people like to think people say it is, if I'm being supremely honest.
It's a little bit messy.
It's a little bit messy, but that's okay. Being messy is fine. But damn, this Persona 7... Not Persona 7. Yakuza 7. God, we're missing a whole ass Persona game in those in-betweens.
We just skipped the sixth one.
6 never happened. It's like...
Six is the devil's number. We don't believe in it.
But yeah, that's why Yakuza 7, like, really hits home, and in a way that's very good and feels legit.
Very much so.
Also, it has Ichiban in it.
And we love Ichiban. He's just... I think it's very hard to actually overstate how lovable this guy is.
I think what really helps with Ichiban's writing, and all the characters in the grand scheme of things, is that there's this... it's genuine. It's genuine. There's no irony. There's no, everyone's a little teasing, but, like, in the end, everyone's like, Ichiban's a good guy.
Yeah, it's like, we don't quite see the world the same way he does.
No,
but...
I don't think anyone does.
And you never really feel like it's making fun of Ichiban, because it's just like, yeah, this is cool, and he goes through a lot, but he's also a cool guy.
Yeah. I think the ultimate end statement we really want to make, because we could probably go for another 2 hours if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to, because Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Is that ultimately this is a game that I think you should play.
I agree.
And also praise Seiko and Songhui, best girls.
Best girls.
Finally, someone joins Haruka in the best girl line, because Kaoru hasn't been seen in years.
To close things up, kind of especially with themes, Ichiban says kind of something along the lines at the end that, even if you're at the bottom, you can start over and you can go from there. And it sounds cheesy out of context, but, like, within the story in the game, it works so well. And I always feel a little more hopeful after I've played Yakuza 7. I'm gonna get really hokey here for a second.
Oh, go get
and really fucking nerdy. Can I say that Ichiban Kasuga actually inspires me to be a better person? Can I say that?
Yeah.
He does. I see Ichiban, and it's like, God, I want to be that kind of person in someone's life. I want to have that kind of genuine positivity and earnest care for people. I I I want to be more like Ichiban.
Except for the
And
part
that's
where you mentioned everything is Dragon Quest. Maybe something else.
oh, I already do that. I've already got that down. But I just I don't know, he's one of those fictional characters that I genuinely admire the traits that he has. Is that silly to say?
No. I think it's an example of like being someone like Ichiban is a good thing. So
I ask myself, what would Ichiban Kasuga do? And maybe that's not applicable to everything,
no,
but
definitely not. I don't think I want to know what he wants to do when you have a flat tire.
but I don't know. I just Ichiban means a lot to me. He's a really good character. He's really well done, and we need more Ichibans in the world.
Damn straight. I think this is a good time to wrap up our little soiree into Yakuza 7. We want to talk
Yeah,
more
we've
about
been
this.
going for a bit.
Yeah, we've been going for a bit, and honestly, have you been watching anything interesting? Because I haven't.
Oh, not really. No,
There you
I've
go.
been playing lots. I've been playing lots of Baldur's Gate.
There you go. That's, there you go. Point is, everyone, thank you all for listening to this, little discussion of a game we really like. So you can follow Sardo here at Autopsy Garlands on Twitter. Mark Eagle for the art account. Uncle Death on Blue Sky. Uncle Death on Twitch, spelled with a K, both cases.
Yes,
You'll be streaming tonight. Probably.
I will be.
Unless you
I'll be.
unless you get sick.
I don't. Hopefully that won't happen.
Yeah,
But so yeah.
Most likely, yes. You're probably streaming tonight.
Yes,
comes out.
I'll be drawing.
You'll be drawing. I'll be there at 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the rest of the time zones. You can do the math from there. And
You can
I'm
figure
at
it.
Almighty Stross on Twitter, Blue Sky, Twitch. We're on Twitch. I'm streaming Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with you there. We're playing Persona 5 Strikers. It's been fun.
It's been so much fun.
It's been so much fun to be back. And then, well, me and Keanu is coming soon.
Oh, I can't wait.
We're going to probably have to talk about that game too. Whoops. We keep talking about games I've streamed, and Sardo was there to join me through the whole of it.
We're in this together.
Like at this point, it wasn't planned to go this way, but fuck it. Here we are.
Yes.
But anyway, folks, thank you all for coming. We will see you next Monday where we'll talk about something different.
Yeah.
I don't know yet. We haven't decided yet.
We shall
We're
see.
recording this current episode. How would we know?
That would be very impressive.
We'd have to at least wait until after we're done. Goodbye, everyone.
Good night, everybody.